Hannah and Cailin, back again with Double Talk. I'm Hannah.
And I'm Cailin.
In May 2020, it seemed like every time we opened the Twitter app, all we got was bad news. During one of the most intense periods of doom scrolling we've ever seen on the platform, a sliver of sunshine appeared in our timelines. A series of photos of a British gardener who was very proud of his giant homegrown veggies. Gerald Stratford quickly became known as Twitter's granddad, and soon found himself with an army of followers who couldn't get enough of his wholesome garden updates. Since going viral, Gerald has become a published author and even modeled for Gucci, all while keeping up his growing garden. Listen in as we chat with the king of big veg about how he got into gardening, his advice for others on finding their passion, and what life has been like since he became a social media star.
It brings me so much joy to see your joy when you're in your garden working with your vegetables. At what point did you discover your passion for gardening in the first place?
I've had a passion for gardening all my life. You know, my father sort of dragged me around when I was knee-high to a grasshopper. And, you know, whatever he done installed in me the love of gardening he had. And I just do it naturally. I love doing it. It's not an act. I just love gardening and the pleasure it gives me. And if it gives other people pleasure with me in my garden, I'm happy for them.
How does it make you feel to see how many people are just so touched and their hearts are warmed by the joy that you have for what you do?
I'm coming to terms with it now. At the beginning, in 2020, when we were in lockdown and COVID and all the dangers of the world, it was very strange. You know, I couldn't understand it. I'm not very good with technology. You know, if it wasn't for my nephew and my good lady Elizabeth, you know, I would fail. But I come through it all kicking and shouting.
At what point, you mentioned your nephew and your lady, at what point did they kind of help you bring your passion for gardening to the web? Like you mentioned, it was during the pandemic, it was crazy times. How did you come to share this with the world?
Elizabeth and myself, we moved to this little bungalow up in the Cotswolds in West Oxfordshire in 2016. And I've always been a gardener, but my other passion was fishing. I loved fishing. And I've been fishing all my life. And I thought, I'm getting a little bit bored fishing. You know, I've got a lovely back garden. And let's embrace it and let's do something because we both love gardening. And we done our garden, and a friend of mine, I was talking to him up country, and he mentioned social media, Twitter, etc. And, you know, have you thought of it? And I said, no, I haven't. So I investigated a little bit, and then I realized I couldn't join it. So I phoned my nephew up, and a few days later, he lives about 1 hour away. He come over and got me on Twitter. And I posted 1 or 2 posts and have 1 or 2 posts back. And between February 20 and May 20, I had something like 96 followers. And I was quite chuffed with that. I thought, oh, that's nice. I felt quite sort of pleased and happy that people want to talk with me about gardening. And on the 16th of May 20, I had a bucket with some potatoes in ready to harvest. And it was a nice sunny day. It was a Saturday. And I gave Elizabeth my iPhone because everything is done through our iPhones. And she took a couple photographs of me harvesting these potatoes. And I put a caption under one of them, my first early rocket. Well, please. Rocket is the variety of potato. It's a small round potato for new potatoes. And my phone started buzzing and tweeting and making all sorts of noise. And I didn't really understand what was happening, because in the past it's just been pinging now and again. But now all of a sudden it's pinging every millisecond. Now I didn't know what to do, so I hid the phone. And when I went to bed, it was still ringing and pinging. So I phoned my nephew up and said, "What can I do?" Well, he showed me over the phone how to silence it, and he said, "I'll come back in a few minutes and find out what's happened." Well, true to word, he'd come back in a few minutes and said, "You've gone viral, Gerald, with your spuds." And I'd gone from 96 followers to 9,000 in a few hours. And within, say, 72 hours, 2 to 3 days, I'd shot up to 82,000. And I just didn't understand really what was happening. I was embracing it. It made me feel good that so many people were interested in me and a few potatoes. It's been a juggernaut ride ever since.
What a fun new experience for you to kind of dip your toes into this new world. But also, I just keep thinking, like, we all remember so clearly how it felt to be in, like, the beginning of the quarantine in 2020. And people, it makes sense that kind of everything happened. It makes sense to me that everything happened for you then, because any sliver of joy and passion and happiness that anybody could get at that time, they wanted to grab it. And just seeing somebody, so happy to be in their garden growing these big vegetables, it just
and gardening is something that everybody could do at the time.
And you don't need other people. Yeah. You can be quarantined
right.
while you do it. But I mean, and then you mentioned also that even before gardening, you had this passion for fishing. And I just wonder what you would say to somebody who wants to find their passion like you have, that to be so into something as you are and to love something so much as you do gardening, but they haven't found it yet. What would you say to them?
I think, you can have a passion for anything. Needlework, using the laptop, photography, gardening, angling, athletics, sport. What you feel happy with, embrace it and show the world how you're enjoying it. That is one good thing with social media now. We can really tell the whole world how happy we are. Because there's when I first started, the world was in quite a dark place with COVID, especially. And Elizabeth and myself, we thought, well, is this it? Is this the end? With people going into hospital and not coming out, and and we just sort of locked ourselves away in our little house and garden. We had our supplies delivered, so we didn't have to go to town, etc. And it stayed, that way of life. We've just kept with it. And it's so nice talking to you two ladies and other people like you. And if I can make people smile, I'm not a comedian, but I think if you smile, people smile back.
I agree. I think what we learned from you and your story is that joy is contagious. Absolutely.
Yes, I can't recite it all, but I'm a great fan of an English comedian who's passed on called Spike Milligan. And he come out with some fabulous poems and etc. And one of them is about smiling is contagious. It spreads like a plague, and it's so true. there's an old saying in this little old country of ours, you know, smile and the whole world smiles with you, cry and you cry alone.
You've actually become an author. You have a book called Big Veg. I'm wondering, how did you incorporate your grandfatherly wisdom, as people say, and your dry humor as well? You say you're not a comedian, but you are very funny, into this book about gardening.
I always wanted to write a book about fishing, and it never happened. I have to have a passion to put pen to paper. I'm not a natural author. I was dyslexic up until my teenage years and found it very, very hard to put words together. I still struggle at times now with certain things like the I and E. I find I get those confused. But I overcome it. Elizabeth's a great teacher. And we were asked about the book. And I thought about it and I thought, yeah, let's go for it. And from October 20 until the following June of 21, we burnt the midnight oil and put the book together. It's not a big book. It's a small book. A lady put it together for us from the company. She done a good job. It's not just about big veg. It's just about growing veg, you know, and at the end of the day, I love just growing food to eat. I'm a big man. I'm 6'3" and nearly 20 stone.
Oh, we're 5 foot, so we would be very tiny next to you.
And, you know, it's just a passion. And when I used to go fishing, I used to think, you know, I'll catch a fish this big. The next time I go, can I get one bigger or heavier? And when I started gardening in earnest, I thought, wonder if I could do the same with vegetables. Well, you can, you know, and a small part of my daily life is trying to grow vegetables a little bit bigger than normal.
Now, this may seem like a silly question, but how do you grow vegetables that are bigger than the average vegetable of that type?
First of all, you need the correct seed. You can't have a small potato to grow into a monster. So you have to start with the correct seed. And the seed is available in this country. You know, it's not a closed shop. You know, big vegetable seed is available. And then there's certain tricks of the trade, you know, like my big carrots. Now they're grown in a 200-litre or a 50-gallon barrel. You know, you fill it full of sand, and then with a crowbar, you core out a hole to the bottom, carrot shape. You know, you push the bar in and do that. And then when you pull it out, you've got a carrot-shaped hole of 3-4 feet long. And then you mix it with a certain compost, which I make, into that cavity. Give it a good watering. Plant 3 seeds. And when they all grow up, you have to be cruel. You have to get rid of 2 and leave 1. And that one, with a lot of luck and TLC, will give you a 3-foot carrot or a 4 feet parsnip.
The way you're describing it, I never would have thought of it. It's almost like they say that goldfish grow depending on how big their enclosure is. Like if you want a big carrot, you have to give them a bunch of space to grow. I never would have thought of that, and yet it's obvious looking back. Now, do you like eating vegetables more than, I know that your love is for gardening. You also said that you, of course, grow them to eat them. Do you love eating vegetables? Do you eat them every day? Yes. You're a big vegetable. Yes, yeah.
We're not vegetarians, but we do love our veg. You know, there's nothing better than, you don't have to have a big steak to enjoy your plate of food. A small steak is enough protein, and then have lots of vegetables to go with it. You know, and the sauce helps everything go down.
And everything tastes better when you grow it yourself.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That is so true. It's very hard for me to explain to somebody who doesn't grow veg, but I'm always giving my vegetables away to prove, you know, if somebody comes round. And since this fame, you know, lots of people visit, and they'll always go home with a vegetable of some sort. And I tell them, you eat it straight away. Don't put it away for a week. Eat it straight away. There's no comparison.